Hi, class. Congratulations! You made it to the end. Woohoo! I know many of you have been working really hard this semester, not just in my class, but throughout the whole program. So I just want to again congratulate you for all of your hard work. But I also wanted to take a minute to kind of recap what we've done over the course of the semester. So let's back up a little bit. We started off first looking at the new California ELD standards. We established that we're no longer doing ELD levels 1 through 5, but we're now doing emerging, expanding, and bridging. And also, even in emerging, expanding, and bridging, we have early emerging and late emerging, and early expanding, late expanding, and early bridging and late bridging. We also said that when you look at the structure of the new ELD standards, they kind of help us out because they align with the Common Core standards. So usually the corresponding Common Core standard is right there on the side when you look at the ELD standards. As we continued to progress this through the semester, we also started looking at theories of second language acquisition. We looked at some people that you've already talked about. We talked about Jim Cummings, and we talked about Jim Cummings' model of academic language. Do you remember that? Do you remember which quadrant Jim Cummings said that our instructional approaches need to fall in? That was quadrant B, which is high context, high cognitive demand. We also talked about, of course, we can't have in the course without reminding us of the Bix and Caps, right? The social and the academic language, which is really important because as we continue to progress this semester, I had you all continuously develop language and content objectives. I hope you're starting to understand more why having language and content objectives are so important, especially for my STEM people. If you are teaching the content of science, you still need to teach our English language learners the social language they need in order to complete a science activity. So content and language objectives are extremely important when we are supporting the needs of our English language learners. We also got into vocabulary development as related to English language learners, specifically in the content areas. We said there are a few areas of consistent struggle for English language learners. One is homophones and homonyms. Remember, we looked at math language such as plus and plus, some SUM and some SOM, product and the way it's used. So there are a lot of homophones and homonyms in science and social studies that can be extremely pardon me, confusing for our English language learners. We also talked about one good strategy, vocabulary strategy, is using a vocabulary frame. And when we were in class that day, we said that a vocabulary frame or word map, it could have the synonym, the antonym, the reminds me of. Does anyone remember why reminds me of is so important? Reminds me of is the student's opportunity to make a personal connection to the word. And also they're doing a sentence to go along with their word. Okay. We also talked about factors in science and social studies that could be difficult for our ELs. And again, it goes back to vocabulary. It goes back to long sentence structures. It goes back to lack of visual support. It goes back to really dense concepts that are taught in a non-hands-on way. So what is our goal with our English language learners, particularly when we're talking about content area instruction? We're front loading key vocabulary, but we're not overloading it, right? We're not giving them 10 words at a time. I would say try to keep it to 5 to 8, 10 max. Anything beyond that is going to go in one ear and out the next. We also said in order for students to learn content vocabulary so they can get through the science and social studies text, they need multiple exposures to a word. So we said multiple exposures lead to deep understanding. Also, we said in the areas of science and social studies for English language learners, many of them do not have the background knowledge. So tapping into that background knowledge, making those real world connections for them becomes really, really important. Moving along, we also started getting into family and community assets. We had a conversation about Louise Moll's funds of knowledge. And we talked about how important it was for us to not only go into students' homes to find out what their funds of knowledge are, but to also to bring that funds of knowledge into the classroom. The goal is so that there will not be a huge home school gap. We want to be that ambassador for our students and their parents as well. We also got into community assets, and many of you all did some wonderful community searches, and you looked at the assets and the neighborhoods in which you teach. One of the things we said was an issue for English language learners and diverse students is that a lot of times teachers who teach in schools with diverse learners actually don't live in those communities, so they have no idea what is available to students in the community, and so therefore they start having this deficit perspective, right? Oh, my students don't have this. Oh, their families don't have that. Now, that is true probably in some cases, but at the same time, with funds of knowledge and community assets, we know that there are a variety of resources available to them. Last but not least, we also started to get into assessment. Now, for English language learners, we know they have to be assessed both formally and informally. And if we're doing informal assessments, or actually regardless of what type of assessment, English language learners need to be assessed for their reading, writing, listening, and speaking. Okay, we need to make sure we're assessing all four skill areas. But also, not as only is it important to assess those four skill areas, but it's also important for students to assess and set their personal goals. So some of you all who did the case study, you might remember there was a little checklist that had happy face, middle face, sad face, and then it gave students a choice. Speaking in English, I am happy face, middle face, sad face. Speaking in Spanish, I am happy face, middle face, sad face, etc. Also, just a reminder that even if you don't speak the home language, you can still incorporate it into the classroom through the use of cognates. As we said, in math and science and social studies, in those content areas, there are actually way more cognates than in other cases. So remember, cognates are the words that have the same root across languages. Example, mathematics, matemáticas, okay? And finally, we looked at the curriculum framework. I really want to encourage you all to keep going back to that curriculum framework, the new one that's out by the state of California. You all read excerpts of that throughout the semester. That framework is very useful because it gives those scenarios like you all looked at last week, and it shows you how the teacher is integrating the standards, supporting the needs of English language learners, and also assessing those students. Also throughout the semester, you've gotten a variety of resources in terms of apps you can use to support English language development. So if you don't remember, if you look in the last page of your syllabus, there's quite a few apps. You've also gotten quite a few websites. Colorín Colorado is one of my favorite websites. BreakingNewsEnglish.com is also a really great one. So I've given you a list of those apps and those resources throughout the semester and also in the syllabus. So again, I just wanted to take this time to say congratulations, great work this semester, and I wish you all the best. If you need anything, let me know. Also, I will be emailing you your final grade for your projects within the next week or so. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. Have a great holiday, and I wish you all the best.